Hey everyone, thanks for coming. This is, again, effective localization of testing using Soft Labs and Proxies. I'm Tom Kija from Soft Labs. With me I have Paul Reinheimer from Proxy. And before I get started, there's a resource link at the bottom of the slide that has the slide deck with open dyslexic font. All right, so I just want to give a really quick intro to Soft Labs. We are the experts in continuous testing. We've been doing this for over 10 years. We're pretty much known for being the experts, like I said. So in addition to that, we offer the most comprehensive coverage for browser testing, desktops, mobile emulators, simulators, real devices, etc. We have the ability to scale to meet the demand of some of the world's largest dev orgs for up to thousands of VMs. And because we've been doing this for so long, we know how to optimize our VMs for testing. So that translates to having the lowest false failure rate in the industry, which is less than 0.02%. We also offer the best tools to help fixing problems found with extended debugging features, Chrome debugging, analytics that you can really narrow down into what errors you're getting in your tests. And you can also be confident that our test environment is highly secure. We are trusted by some of the most the largest financial institutions in the nation. And we also have the experts in the continuous testing community at our company. So our co-founder, Jason Huggins, created Selenium and co-created Appium. And many of our technical services people here are the thought leaders in the market and active contributors to Selenium and Appium. And then I'll go ahead and hand it over to Paul.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. My name is Paul Reinheimer, and I'm one of the co-founders at Proxy. A number of you had the opportunity to submit some questions before today began, and one of the questions that came in was, what is the purpose of this webinar? Which is a great question. Really, my goal here today is to talk about what localization is and how people are using it, and then focus on the challenges in localization for testers. I'm then going to present what we think is the best solution when it comes to testing localized websites and walk you through the steps that are involved in that in the both sort of manual world and in the Soft Labs ecosystem. I had a little bit of fun working on sort of my intro slide today because this is the map of all of the locations in the world where Proxy has a point of presence. And I'm one of the co-founders of Proxy, as I mentioned, and when we started, this map only had 7 dots on it. So we've grown a lot since that first day. And I started Proxy because I had a friend in QA, and it was his job to make sure that our employer's website was doing the right thing for the right people in the right countries. And for them, it was the right billing provider. They use different billing providers around the world. And in order to do that, he was using some sort of free web proxy solution that wasn't working that well. And his job was, let me say, suboptimal. And so I started Proxy with some of the countries that they cared about, and his job got much better. And it makes things a lot easier for people. Localization testing really helps out in a lot of different ways. A lot of websites are now trying to show you the right thing when you land on their homepage rather than needing to go through a bunch of drop-downs or hoops to figure out who you are. As a Canadian going to a lot of American websites, I've memorized the fact that Canada is often the 3rd country starting with a letter C in a drop-down of all of the world's countries. And more websites are using localization to make things a little easier for their customers to improve sales. So our agenda today is to talk about what localized content is, what the challenges are when it comes to testing localized content, what options you can look at to meet those challenges. Then we're going to talk about setting up a proxy server, then manual testing using Soft Labs and that proxy server, then automated testing using Soft Labs and that proxy server, and finally a couple of different ways to test, structure your tests when you're moving into the automated world. So let's look at some examples of localized content. Here is the AccuWeather website. If you've been on the internet for a while, you probably remember in ye olden days, you'd go to a website to find out what the weather is, and then you'd spend a couple of minutes choosing your location and waiting for the page to refresh, and then finally it might tell you what the weather is supposed to be. AccuWeather has joined the present and will detect where you are in the world using the IP address of your computer and show you the right weather correctly, just from the default without any interaction on your side. So here are 2 screenshots that I took of AccuWeather at roughly the same time, one of them using our server in New Zealand and one of them using our server in Peru. And so you can see that users coming to this website will have a much better experience. They go there, they immediately see the content they care about, which is the weather for their part of the world, and they're going to enjoy it better. Another example would be a website like CNN. They take a look at your IP address and they show you one of two distinct versions of their website. One of them is for Americans, so there's greater emphasis on US politics, more domestic events, and then there's an international version of the website that they serve to people outside the United States. With CNN, you have the ability to choose which version of the website you're seeing, but they make the instant choice based on where you are in the world, rather than like a huge pop-up and some cookies or something like that, or maybe sending people away because they're not seeing the content they expect. And finally, here's an example of a popular online retailer, Amazon, and this is me going to Amazon.com. So I get this nice friendly banner at the top that says, hey, you're shopping from Canada, would you rather visit Amazon.ca? I'm in Canada, I might prefer to see prices in Canadian dollars, get the shipping speeds I expect, not having to pay duties. There's a bunch of advantages for me to go to Amazon.ca. And so there's a friendly reminder here giving me that option. All three of these websites haven't done localization just for fun. They're doing it to improve their bottom line. Amazon might want more sales, CNN and AccuWeather might want higher time on site for more advertising views, greater iShare, that kind of stuff. And so they've invested a lot of time and effort into making these websites do the right thing for their customers from the start, generally using GeoIP. And as QA people, this presents a lot of challenges for us. Fundamentally, those challenges come into play when you start providing unique content to more regions than you have development and QA teams. So if you've got development and QA teams in Canada and the United States and you start localizing for the UK or Mexico, you're going to run into problems because you're no longer able to sort of get somebody to just go to the website and see what they see. If anything, I think this bullet point almost undersells it, because as a developer, I'd like to see the bug myself, and if I can't see it because it's only visible to people in some other part of the world, some bug reports are helpful to get started, but really I'd love to be able to see it myself. If you're integrating any other technologies into your website, like payment processors, advertising, plugins, those will probably do their own localization and won't respect anything else you're doing. And really, providing the wrong content costs you money through whatever way that your website cares about. If it's lower time on site, higher bounce rate, lower sales, lost sales because your pages are optimized poorly. You're dealing with more support costs because you've shown people the wrong promotions and they want to know why they didn't get free shipping or 2-day shipping or something like that, or even ending up giving people their money back. And these things are sort of the direct costs, but you've also spent all of that time and effort developing a localized website that now isn't being shown to the people, and so you've invested the money to get those returns that you're not getting. So it's not great. When it comes to options for localization testing, we've seen a number of different ones before people end up landing on us, hopefully. The first one is people just cross their fingers and hope. Hey boss, the localization stuff's working, I promise. Good luck. This happens more often than I think many of us would like to admit, but it's out there. The second option, and this is the one that my former employer used, was free web proxies. There's a large number of these across the internet. If you Google free web proxies, you'll find a couple. A number of them even have multiple locations around the world. You enter the address of the website you want to go to, and then it sort of tries to load the page, making it work through their website as the actual URL. And so you end up sort of with injected advertisements. There can be some security problems. JavaScript can break because it can't refer to the right URL. There's a number of challenges here. The target market for these things is often high school students trying to avoid their school firewall, not QA teams trying to test a website. So it's not an optimal experience for people. You can hack your website. So some people, and you can see in my address bar at the top, I've got location equals France, which didn't actually change the content of this page because we don't allow hacks. And this is relatively common. Some people do it with the address bar or by setting a special cookie. And they're just sort of avoiding their actual location code and hard coding something else. This happens quite a lot. There's a number of challenges here. The first is that it doesn't address things like plugins, advertising, any sort of third-party code, even Flash or WebRTC on your website probably won't respect the hacks that you're injecting. And as a QA person, I always want to make sure that I'm testing the code that my end users are running. And in this case, I wouldn't be. I'd be executing the code path that is that hack rather than the actual code I want to be running because my end users are seeing it. So you end up doing a lot of QA work on a hack rather than on the code your end users are running. And the fourth option, and perhaps today's webinar title was a kind of a spoiler alert here, is you can use proxy servers. A proxy server is, or a proxy is a piece of software that receives requests and forwards them on to wherever they're supposed to go, and then receives the response and sends it back to the original requester. And you can locate proxy servers wherever you want around the world, assuming there isn't some sort of local law against them, which is something that we've needed to worry about. And generally, you're going to locate them in the regions of the world you care about. So originally, I put them in 7 different countries because our first customer cared about those. But if you're caring about just a few locations, you can locate them there. The challenges you run into with proxy servers are you need to find those locations, and it's just a small external dependency to maintain. But fundamentally, you end up testing the parts of your website that your end users are running without having to inject any hacks or any weird things, and all of your external plugins work as you'd expect. So I'm actually going to walk through the process behind setting up a proxy server. This isn't going to be a huge in-depth thing. It'll just take a few minutes, but it doesn't need to be that hard. The first step is really going to be to find a provider. Most cloud providers have multiple points of presence around the world. And so like this is the map from DigitalOcean. Google's in a large number of different locations. So is Amazon, so is Microsoft. Linode is in a few different places. And so if you're using one of the larger cloud providers already, you can probably piggyback on your existing account and just set a few of them up around the world. If you're looking for big cities, there's probably a decent number of providers in them. If you're willing to use multiple providers like Google in some cities and Amazon in others, you can actually get a pretty good reach. Next, you're going to want to install Squid. This is the exciting live demo part of the presentation. Let's see, I'm going to copy over my terminal window and my Firefox. So I've set up a new DigitalOcean server, and I'm going to install a new Squid proxy server and use it just to show how easy it can be. Success. So I've logged onto my server, and I'm just going to run a few different commands in order to set up this server and get it ready to start proxying requests. The code I'm running here, as well as the configuration I'm going to use for Squid in a few moments, is available in the resources. There is some on the first slide, and I've got another link to the resources at the very end. So here I'm just upgrading my box, just in case it's an old install. I don't want to leave any security vulnerabilities lying around. I'm installing Squid, which is the proxy server that we use. We've looked at a couple of options, and we've settled on it. If you're installing Squid yourself, whatever version you're going to get from your package manager is fine. You don't need to worry about finding the latest and greatest. Something 2 years old is just going to be perfect. I've also installed something called Apache 2 utils. That's just going to allow me to create a user account with my password saved in the right way. And so here we have set up my password, and I'll make my password Puppies, because Puppies is a very secure password. If you're interested in a Wonder Proxy free trial, it's also the free trial code that you need to use. So now I'm going to restart. Oh, no, not quite yet. I'm going to download the Squid configuration file. And while Squid's restarting, let's just take a look at this configuration file and see how we're configuring Squid. Excellent. Font's already big. So I'm going to ask the proxy server to listen port 12,000. I haven't done any IP whitelisting because I'm not going to need it in this case, but I've left this example in here in case anyone else wants to start with this configuration file. I'm going to allow people to log in with a valid username and password if they have one. Don't let anyone else log in. Don't let anyone get to the Squid Manager interface, and disable caching. I'm sure caching is the bane of more QA people than just me, but if you turn it off here, you won't need to worry about other things sort of interfering with your tests after you think you fixed that bug finally. And at the end, we're going to tell Squid to shut down quickly because who's got time to wait for Squid to restart? So Squid is restarted, and now, let's see, I'm going to actually start using this as my proxy server. So this was a very quick install of Squid and setting up a new machine. If you do end up setting up your own, I would talk to somebody on your server team or in IT to get tips on how to set up a server securely. I'm sure your company has some policies around that. You're going to want to try a little bit harder to make sure the attackers don't get in. So here I am in Firefox. I'm going to specify an HTTP proxy, and I'm going to use it for all protocols using that port 12,000 that I had earlier. And now if I go to what is my IP data, I'll type in my username and puppies for my password. Success. So MaxMind now believes I'm in New York, New York. I'm actually in Canada, so that's not quite what I'm looking for. And if I go to a website like leather.com, island-wide blackout. More exciting news there. And apparently, this is not a great demo for me right now because it thinks I'm in California. Let's try AccuWeather. And I think they've given me a cookie that says I'm in Michigan. Yeah, so now I'm using a proxy server, and it was only a few minutes to set up. And I can switch over and use a different proxy server at any time. So if I wanted to start being in Canada, I'll copy my Toronto that I've set up previously and paste that IP and refresh the locate my IP address page. Excellent. I was panicking for just a moment there thinking I'd forgotten my password. And now you can see that I'm in Toronto. And so from here, I can begin testing whatever parts of my website I need to using the localization of these two locations, in this case, New York and Toronto. DigitalOcean has a number of different regions where I could have set up a new droplet and set up a new server. Let's see, we always go with Debian, but I could have gone with any of these locations. So I could have gotten the Netherlands, Singapore, UK, Germany, Canada, and India. So just a number of locations here, really easy to get started. It's a little bit time-consuming to jump into this page and paste in IP addresses all the time. A number of companies out there, including us, will offer you a sort of browser plugin that you can either use with your own proxy servers or with their own servers. And so these are all the proxy servers that I have available through WonderProxy. And so I can just flip around and switch between servers in the United States and then jump back over and look in Switzerland. A little bit easier to manage things if you want to use a plugin, and if not, setting them directly in your browser works really well. Something to watch out for when you are setting up the settings inside your browser is Firefox sets up its proxy server for just the browser, whereas Chrome, IE, and Safari set up the proxy server as a global configuration setting for your computer. So if you're testing in Firefox, you don't need to worry about anything. If you're testing in one of those other browsers and using that regular configuration screen, you'll probably want to close some of the other applications on your machine that are using the internet, just to make sure you're not also proxying your mail requests or something like that. So we've installed Squid, we configured it, and we were able to test it. And here's two examples from Target. This is one I did earlier today where I went to Target from Canada, and you can see that Target.com offered me this large prompt telling me they are now shipping to Canada. And in the United States, I wasn't given that prompt. So Americans, you know, you've been here before, you're safe. Target, we're now shipping to Canada, and here's some details of what that promotion looks like for us. Fantastic. So if you want to do manual testing on your own through your browser, this is enough to get started. If you'd like to be doing it instead with Sauce Labs, that's also easily possible. In order to get going there, the first thing you're going to need is Sauce Connect with the username and password, sorry, the username and your access key for Sauce Labs, as well as a proxy server, and either your username and password for that proxy server or to have whitelisted your IP address. Normally when you're using Sauce Connect, it's a tool used to bypass your company firewall to allow Sauce Labs to access the application or site under test. And that's perfect. That works really well. However, when you introduce a proxy into the mix, it's no longer serving that purpose. Sauce Connect creates that outgoing tunnel to Sauce Labs, Sauce Labs obligingly sends all of the information back through that tunnel. However, when you're using a proxy server, Sauce Connect then forwards those requests out to whatever proxy server you're using, which is going to be outside your corporate firewall. It then returns in, it then goes to the site or application under test. Because of this, you're either going to be limited to testing sites that are publicly available, or you're going to need to be opening up your firewall to the IPs of the proxy servers you're using. Both of those have pros and cons. Most of us want to be testing a little bit earlier, at least staging, if not some of our earlier dev environments. And so in those cases, you'll probably need to be opening up your firewall just specifically for those, the IPs of the proxy servers you're using. When it comes to using Sauce Connect, it's just like you would be normally. So you're running Sauce Connect. The differences here are you're also passing in your proxy hostname and port, as well as your proxy username and password. And it's especially important here to also pass in the name that you'd like to give this tunnel. We like to name our tunnels after the city or the location of the proxy server we're using. So if we have a proxy server in London or Berlin, something like that, we'll name all of our proxy servers accordingly. And then we'll know inside the Sauce dashboard which one is which. Since the Sauce Connect tool is great at running a single tunnel, and often when you're dealing with localization testing, you'd rather be running multiple tunnels simultaneously, we've created a tool that works on Linux/Mac as well as a PowerShell version for Windows users that helps you manage multiple tunnels running simultaneously. And let's see if I can get that working for me right now. So I'll jump back out. And I want to be running Sauce Connect. And I'm going to connect to a few servers here. Let's go to New York, Toronto, Berlin, and Miami. So it's setting up multiple tunnels for me here simultaneously, which is great. Just giving them all your unique ID, the unique PID, all that kind of fun stuff. And while that's being built up, let's jump over and look at my Sauce Labs dashboard. Perfect. So my tunnels are ready. And now inside my Sauce Labs dashboard, I can see that I have 4 tunnels available to me. And when it comes to executing a manual test, let's go to AccuWeather.com. And I'm a Mac user, so I need to be testing in Microsoft more often on Edge. So let's do Edge. And then I'll just select where I want to be in the world. I really like the your ad here option. While it's building up these, it's building up the machine for me. Cool. So you may recall that I typed in that I wanted to go to AccuWeather.com. And so AccuWeather has detected that I'm in Germany, and it's now giving me the localized version of the website for users in Germany. And it's also showing me, apparently, maybe people in Germany would like t-shirts with pictures of animals on them. Hopefully their advertising framework is picking the right stuff. But I'm getting the right weather information for people in Berlin, which is fantastic. And that was not that much effort on our part. Luckily, Wonder Proxy was providing the proxy server, so it's easy to set up a bunch. But from going from nothing to looking at the localized version of our website, being able to look at it in different browsers, different platforms, thanks to the Sauce platform, really easy to get started and start looking for these problems and making sure that we're protecting our revenue. I'll end my session. And so there's links to our Sauce Connect tool and the resources at the end. So don't worry about that one. And if you're not using Wonder Proxy, you're welcome to hack it apart and just enter in your own tunnels to create. Sorry. And so we created our tunnels. We were able to select our tunnels and figure out, and execute whatever testing we wanted to do. And we're good to start. When it comes to automated testing, and this is actually going to be the shortest section of our presentation today, because there's over 100 people in here right now, and there's probably over 100 different ways that automated tests are being run. But all you need to do is, when you're setting up your tests, often the way different languages refer to it is can change from language to language. But when you're specifying usually something related to capabilities, you're going to be probably specifying your platform, your browser name. And just like you would if you were specifying a tunnel to bypass your firewall, instead specify a tunnel that identifies the location you want to be running your tests from. We've seen people structure their tests in a number of different ways, from some sort of importing from a database saying, from London, this should be here, in Berlin, it should be this thing, or just, completely different tests from one location to the next to handle the localization elements. And this is just a different language example. Again, we're just going to be specifying our tunnel ID and connecting. And so Proxy, we run these tests whenever we do a new build, and we've got our website built in PHP. And so running PHP unit, this ran making sure that we were showing people, I think, the right country selected by default in the dropdown when they were starting to enter in their purchase information. And from our dashboard, it looks perfect. We've got all of these tests running simultaneously. Here you can see we're running through Vancouver, Tel Aviv, Albuquerque, making sure we've got the right stuff showing. As customers get set up with Proxy, we tend to see them move through two different testing strategies. They'll start off using standalone tests, where they've got a specific test that goes in, tests the localized portion of the website, whether that's a banner or the right currency selected by default, runs that test and then ends. So they've got a pool of tests that is testing all of the functionality of their website, and then a pool of tests that test the localization part of the website, and they'll build up the standalone tests to get started. This is really easy to get started with. It'll cover your visible elements, but you can end up missing a lot of edge cases. As people sort of grow in their testing world, they start incorporating their localization into all of their existing tests. So rather than having a single add to shopping cart test, they would have one add to shopping cart test for every locale they're in. If you've been doing QA for a while, you've probably got some great horror stories for different ways that, or different weird bugs you've encountered over time. I know I've seen some crazy things, something only breaks if two people with a period in their username log in the same minute, then something breaks. And so the more integrated your tests become with locale, the more edge cases you're going to find. For closing thoughts here, really what we're thinking about is that, or really what we know is that localization is good for the bottom line. Testing localized websites will present a lot of new challenges. We believe proxies are an excellent or the best way to test your localized website. And the integration of proxies into Sauce Labs is relatively easy thanks to their great Sauce Connect tool. Overall, we believe you should be working towards extending all of your tests to be aware of your locale, and you should find all of those crazy edge cases and protect the investments that your company's made in localization, as well as making sure that you're seeing all of the revenue you should be getting out of those options. Here's another link to the resources that I mentioned at the very beginning, wonderproxy.com/sauce resources. I've got all of the links for the things we went through today, including the script I used to set up the server, the configuration for Squid, etc. There's also a link there for a free Proxy trial if you want to just experiment over your next lunch hour and see what you can do with Sauce Labs and Proxy testing around the world. You'll need a free trial code. It's puppies, all lowercase. Puppies is only one word. That will get you started. And if you're watching this in the recording, that should work for about the next month, at which point if you want to give us a try, you'll probably need to send us an email. We like to validate who our customers are before they sign up normally, because there's a surprising number of people in the world who want to use proxy servers to spam Craigslist, and that's not really a thing we want to do. We'd like to make the internet better, not worse. There's also more links there for Sauce Labs and setting up your Sauce Connect in high availability configurations, and fun stuff there. I think we got some earlier questions via email, but we're happy to address any other questions as they come in. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everyone. So, like you just said, we have some questions that we got, and I'll just go ahead and start reading them. And so here's the first one. How does it work for testing localized content on tablets and mobile browsers, responsive websites as well as mobile apps, native and hybrid? Paul, do you wanna get that one?
Sure. So we saw with Sauce Labs that you're definitely able to test all of the different mobile browsers through their platform, which is awesome. So by selecting a tunnel at the beginning there, I could have gone through and selected any one of those different options through Sauce Labs, and the localization works just as you'd expect. So if you've selected a proxy server in Berlin, you should be seeing the content that people in Berlin are seeing right now, and you shouldn't have any further problems.
Yep, and just to add onto that, for the mobile side, there's Sauce Labs has a real device offering, and in it you can set the GPS of that device anywhere in the world, so you can kind of have that localized content through that as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Next question coming in says, does the proxy server govern whether localized weather forecasts are in Fahrenheit or Celsius? The forecast for Germany you just showed use Fahrenheit.
So that's an excellent question. It's really going to depend on what the website is bothered to do. In that case, I think AccuWeather is an American company, and they're probably showing Fahrenheit by default all over the world. If I were them, I would probably go a step further and also have a database lookup, not just for the user's location, but maybe some other preference settings. So for people in Germany or Canada, show Celsius by default. I guess really for people anywhere other than the United States, show Celsius by default is I think where the world is now, maybe one other country. So it's going to depend entirely on how people have structured their website. We see people who do very small amounts of localization where it's maybe, you know, as simple as just showing a maple leaf for Canadians on the homepage, to people who really dig in and show, you know, different product lines, maybe different sizes, as they've evolved their localization there.
Awesome. Another question that we got just now, can you run an automated geo test in headless Chrome or headless Firefox?
Can you run an automated test? You can. So if you're running Selenium and using headless Chrome or headless Firefox, both of them allow you to set up a proxy. And so if you're specifying that proxy, you can do it that way. Or if you're running it headless, you might as well run those servers directly on or run headless Chrome or headless Firefox directly on a server in Germany or France or wherever you'd like to be. So if that's far enough for you, you can do it either way.
Cool.
We actually, we also have documentation on our website about setting up stuff directly with Selenium and proxy servers. I'll make sure, if that's not currently linked to on our resources page, we'll update that in about 15 or 20 minutes to link to that document directly.
Cool. All right. Next question. We have unique URLs across our regions, USCAN, AP, LATAM, and EU. How does this help?
Sure. So if you have a number of different URLs, and Amazon could be an example of this, where they have amazon.com, .co.ca, .co.uk, .fr, etc. And so for Amazon, they do have unique URLs around the world, and anyone is welcome to go to any of them. But in addition to that, what they're offering is detecting somebody from one part of the world visiting perhaps the wrong or an unintended version of their website and offering to send them to a website that may be more optimal for them. So it may be that you're not offering any localization to users except if they go to the correct URL. And so this could be, or if you're using GeoIP, would be a great way of helping users find the content that's right for them. And so an example could be if you've only ever had .com and you're launching your .ca or your .mx TLD to help people in Canada or Mexico, it may be difficult for people to find out that offering is there. And so by testing them with GeoIP, figuring out where they are in the world, you can make that offer just like Amazon to say, hey, we've got a localized version of the website just for you. Would you rather be going there?
Awesome. Next question is I can take this one. So it's, I know the wait for methods in Appium with Selenium Fluent, but didn't find something like this in XCUI test. I believe the method for this is wait for expectations, and then parentheses, and the parameters are timeout handler. and you can just Google that and find the official XUI docs. All right. Next question is how Soft Labs works in secured network behind the firewall. So Soft Labs has that tool called Soft Connect that Paul went over a little bit in the webinar. It's essentially a 256-bit encrypted tunnel between wherever you launch it and Soft Labs servers. So, for example, if you have some dev or QA sites that are behind your firewall, you can just launch up a Soft Connect tunnel and connect through Soft. Next question. If the application involves a file transfer operation, we need to test whether a file transfer interface is localized according to the language selected. How can we achieve that? Paul?
Sorry, I was muted. Could you repeat the question? I have to leave the slides up, so I can't read them off my email.
Yep. So if the application includes a file transfer operation, we need to test whether a file transfer interface is localized according to the language selected. How can we achieve that?
So it's not clear to me from the question whether or not any GeoIP is actually being used here. If somebody is selecting from a drop-down their language, then you would be testing that, probably not using GeoIP. I would suggest that GeoIP would be a great way to default to the correct language. And past that, that's really a Selenium question of making sure that people have picked the right drop-down and then how to test the file that they're provided, more so than a proxy one.
Cool. And then I think one more question here. How to connect to the Appium server when tunneling when there are proxies. And so Paul did go over this a little bit, but the more specific command that you can find, again, in the documentation is just starting up the Soft Connect tunnel with sd/bin in your terminal, and then adding a P tag and a W tag. The P tag will be just the proxy that you're using, and the W one will be for your user and API key for that proxy. All right, and so that is pretty much it. We'll send all of the slides and recording to you over the next couple of days. Again, if you have any questions, you can reach out. I'm sure we can provide some contact information. But thank you all for coming. I really enjoyed doing this. And Paul?
Cool. Thank you very much, everybody. There's one other question that I saw come in that I just wanted to speak to quickly, which was how to deal with China Proxy and the firewall and the Great Firewall of China, because that's an excellent question, I think, and one that we've been dealing with for years. The Great Firewall of China is often thought of as a singular monolithic beast, but it's actually constantly changing and different depending on where you are in China and where your server is. And so it's very difficult. We probably get more questions about our proxy server in China than all of our other servers combined, just because of the Great Firewall. And so our best option there is we run multiple servers in China, not to offer localization within China itself, but specifically because we're one of them, because of whatever the Great Firewall is doing right now, maybe having problems, the other two are probably working. And so your best option for dealing with the Great Firewall of China is probably to have multiple proxy servers available to you in that country. And it can be difficult to get a server running in China because of their additional requirements, but have multiple running and being able to switch between them all the time. But yeah, thank you very much, everybody. I hope that you've learned anything, and we have, if wonderproxy.com/sauce resources if you're looking for slides or downloads or free trials, and the password remains puppies.
Great. Thank you, everyone.